She was the mistress of the most feared psychopath in mafia history, the man Joe Pesci made famous in Goodfellas. But while the movies show the glitz and the hits, they buried the most chilling truth of all. Theresa Ferrara wasn't just a mob wife. She was a high-stakes double agent who helped the feds seize 30 tons of cocaine. And when the Lucchese family found out, they didn't just kill her. They turned her into a message that haunted the New York underworld for decades. February 10th, 1979, 5:30 p.m., a chilly evening in Belmore, Long Island. Inside a brightly lit beauty salon called Apple Haircutters, 27-year-old Theresa Ferrara hangs up the phone with a look of quiet intensity. She grabs her coat, glances at her 19-year-old niece Maria, and says she'll be back in just a couple of hours. She wasn't going to a late dinner or a movie. She told Maria there was $10,000 waiting on a table. Easy money. In the world Theresa inhabited, easy money usually came with a heavy price, but she had spent years navigating the most dangerous circles in New York. She stepped out into the winter air, walked toward a waiting car, and vanished. For months, there was only silence. Her family waited. Her niece, the last person to see her alive, lived in a state of perpetual dread. The FB1, who had been secretly meeting with Theresa for years, began to realize their prize informant had likely been made. Then, on May 18th, 1979, the Atlantic Ocean gave up its secrets. Fishermen at Barnegat Inlet, New Jersey, spotted a torso floating in the water. It was a scene straight out of a horror movie, mutilated, decomposed, and missing its head and limbs.
Police in Long Island's Nassau County are trying to find out whether a headless torso found on a New Jersey beach last month is that of a beautician reported missing in February from Queens. Police say the beautician was 27-year-old Theresa Ferrara, part owner of Apple Haircutters in Long Island. Police believe Miss Ferrara was killed because she knew someone who was involved in the $6 million Lufthansa robbery at Kennedy Airport last December. The torso, the torso was discovered May 18th near Toms River. Police are checking Miss Ferrara's x-rays to compare them with those of the torso.
Took dental records and a grim comparison of physical markers for the Ocean County medical examiner to confirm the identity. It was Theresa. But this wasn't some random act of violence. This was a tactical strike. Theresa Ferrara was a cocaine dealer, a high-stakes con artist, a secret FBI informant, and the mistress of Tommy DeSimone, the hair-trigger murderer immortalized as Tommy DeVito in the film Goodfellas. Before we unravel how this girl from a good family ended up at the center of the biggest heist in American history, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. We're going deep into the archives to tell the stories the movies left on the cutting room floor. To understand how Theresa ended up floating in an inlet, you have to understand where she came from. She wasn't a product of the slums. Born in 1952, she grew up in the Five Towns area of Long Island, an affluent, middle-class Italian-American enclave. But Theresa had a secret weapon that most mob girls didn't. She was a distant blood relative of Carlos Marcello, the undisputed boss of the New Orleans crime family. In the world of the Cosa Nostra, names are currency. Being related to a man like Marcello meant Theresa wasn't just another girl from the neighborhood. She was connected by blood. By the early 1970s, Theresa decided that Long Island was too small for her ambitions. She was a natural beauty, dark hair, sharp features, and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. She told everyone she was going to be a model or an actress, and she moved to Ozone Park, Queens, to find her spotlight. But the spotlight she found wasn't on a runway. It was in the dimly lit booths of Robert's Lounge on Lefferts Boulevard. If you've seen Goodfellas, you know Robert's Lounge. It was a dive bar owned by Jimmy the Gent Burke, but it was really a headquarters for the Vario crew of the Lucchese crime family. This wasn't just a place to grab a drink. It was a hub for hijackings, loan sharking, and planning some of the most audacious crimes in New York history. Paul Vario, a capo in the Lucchese family, used the bar as his office. Henry Hill, the man whose life inspired the movie, was a regular, and then there was Tommy DeSimone. Tommy was a made man's worst nightmare. He was a stone-cold killer who had committed his first murder at age 18 just to see what it felt like. He was the muscle for Jimmy Burke, a man so violent that even other mobsters walked on eggshells around him. Theresa Ferrara walked into this world and didn't blink. She started an affair with Tommy, which was a massive breach of mob protocol. In that world, mistresses were supposed to be invisible, but Theresa refused to stay in the shadows. She showed up at the lounge, she knew everyone's business, and she began to see the massive amounts of money flowing through the crew's drug operations. By the mid-70s, Theresa wasn't just Tommy's girlfriend, she was a business partner. She opened Apple Hair Cutters in Belmore. On the surface, it was a legitimate small business. In reality, it was a distribution hub for cocaine. The Mafia officially banned drug dealing, but that was a rule for the lower ranks. At the top, Paul Vario and Jimmy Burke were overseeing massive pipelines of heroin and cocaine from Florida and South America. Theresa saw the opportunity and took it. She did hair by day and moved kilos by night. But in 1977, the game changed. Theresa tried to sell a significant amount of cocaine to a buyer who turned out to be an undercover DEA agent. She was arrested on the spot, facing 15 years in a federal penitentiary, a literal lifetime for a 25-year-old. Theresa was given a choice: rot in a cell or work for the government. She chose the latter, and that choice would eventually lead to the Barnegat Inlet. For the next 2 years, from 1977 to 1979, Theresa Ferrara lived a double life that would make most professional spies crumble. She was a confidential informant, C1, for the FBI. She wasn't just giving them petty tips, she was providing the wiring diagram of the Vario crew. She reported on who was meeting with whom, which trucks were being hijacked, and, most importantly, where the drugs were moving. In November 1978, thanks in large part to the intelligence Theresa gathered, the FBI and Coast Guard intercepted a shipment in Flushing, Queens. They seized 30 tons of cocaine. At the time, its street value was in the hundreds of millions. It was a staggering blow to the Lucchese family's wallet. Paul Vario was incandescent with rage. He knew there was a leak. He began a cleansing of the ranks, but Theresa was so well connected and so trusted by Tommy DeSimone that she managed to stay above suspicion for a while. Everything accelerated on December 11th, 1978. 6 men entered the Lufthansa cargo terminal at JFK Airport and walked away with $6 million in cash and jewelry. It was the biggest cash robbery in American history, and Jimmy Burke was the mastermind. But Burke was a paranoid sociopath. Instead of celebrating his win, he began killing everyone involved to avoid paying out their shares and to ensure no one could talk to the feds. Parnell Stacks Edwards was the first to go, then Martin Krugman. Then in January 1979, Tommy DeSimone vanished. While Burke was killing his own crew, the Gambino family had also put out a hit on Tommy for the unauthorized murder of Billy Batts, the go-get-your-shine box scene. Theresa was suddenly without her protector. Her lover was dead, her associates were being murdered one by one, and the FBI was pressuring her for more information on the Lufthansa millions. While the bodies were piling up in New York, Theresa tried one last desperate play. She and a con man named Richard Eaton allegedly ripped off the Lucchese family for $250,000 in a botched cocaine deal in Fort Lauderdale. To Paul Vario, this was the final straw. He didn't care about her connection to Carlos Marcello anymore. He didn't care that she had been Tommy's girl. She was a rat and a thief. The mob doesn't kill you when you're looking. They kill you when you think everything is finally going right. On February 10th, 1979, Theresa got that fateful call. The promise of $10,000 was the bait. She was likely told it was her cut or a payment for a deal she'd brokered. She walked out of her salon and into a trap set by men who had been her friends for years. When her body was found 3 months later, the mutilation was specific. The removal of the head and limbs wasn't just to hinder identification. In mob symbolism, it was a message. It meant the person had lost their head, talked to the feds, and walked where they shouldn't, crossed the line. The FBI knew who killed Theresa Ferrara. They knew Jimmy Burke and Paul Vario had ordered it. But in the late 70s, without the body and without a living witness willing to testify about that specific murder, they couldn't bring charges. Burke eventually went to prison, but for point shaving in college basketball, not for the dozens of murders he committed. Vario died in a prison trailer in 1988. Henry Hill, the man who survived it all, would later confirm in his memoirs and interviews that Theresa was erased because she knew too much about the Lufthansa heist and because she had played the feds against the mob. In the movie Goodfellas, Theresa is a background character played by Elizabeth Whitcraft. She's seen at the Friday night parties, looking glamorous. The film shows the death of the male crew members, but it completely skips over the brutal end of the woman who was actually the most dangerous person in the room for the FBI. Why? Because Theresa's story complicates the cool factor of the mob. It shows a woman who was a victim of her own ambition, yes, but also a woman who was used and discarded by two of the most powerful organizations in the world, the Mafia and the US government. Theresa Ferrara's murder remains officially unsolved. There are no plaques for her in Belmore. There is only the cold record of a torso found in an inlet and a 2-paragraph obituary. Theresa Ferrara walked out of her salon thinking she was a player in a grand game. She thought her beauty, her connections, and her value to the feds made her untouchable. She was wrong. In the world of the Lucchese family, there were no partners, only assets and liabilities. And when Theresa became a liability, she was deleted. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like the video. It helps the algorithm find more people who want to hear the truth behind the movies. What do you think? Was Theresa a victim, or did she know exactly what she was getting into? Drop a comment below. I'll be responding to as many as I can. The mob didn't just kill Theresa. They tried to make sure no one remembered her name. By watching this, you're making sure they didn't succeed. Don't forget to subscribe for more true crime investigations. I'll see you in the next one.